nothing.
I have no doubt.
We have any kids here?
Let's get started here. We haven't, That's all right. I call this special called meeting and public hearing, June 17th, to order. How's that? We're going to hear first from our finance director.
I'll do a roll call this time,
Okay.
this special call. So, okay, we have our Mayor Pro Tem, Rebecca Chase Williams,
Present.
and Councilmember Bates Madison, District 3,
Here?
and Councilmember Joe Gebbia, District 4.
Here.
And the Mayor Davis is absent, but we have a quorum. Thank you.
Can you confirm that we advertise this correctly?
Yes,
Will?
we
Okay, great.
did.
Thank you.
All right, now I
You
will
ready?
open the public hearing on the 2014 millage rate. Could we hear first from our finance director, Mrs. Bonnie Klein?
Susan. Ready?
Get the slide prepared just a sec. This is, just want to let you know that this meeting was properly advertised. Notices were published in our legal organ, The Champion, on May 29th and June 5th, and the notice of the meeting and the tax notice was placed on our city's website, and it's still there. In summary, what we're proposing is keeping the millage rate at 2.85, which is the same as it was last year. The gross tax digest is up 14%. 75% of it's due to reassessed properties increased in value. 25% is due to property added. And I'll show you some details in a second. And just a reminder, there's one more public hearing on June 30 at 10:30 a.m., and right after that, the council will vote on the millage rate. Here's some detail how the digest changed from 2013. The motor vehicles were added. DeKalb County was getting the revenue for that for last year. Now the city will be. So there won't be an increase. It'll just be going to a different source. New property is new construction and additions to property. New personal property, that's commercial property, equipment, inventories. And then the reassessments is the $230 million. It's reassessing and increasing value of existing properties that were on the digest last year. Go ahead. And this is a slide illustrating when you get your tax bill of 43.23, and that's based on an estimate of last year's rates. DeKalb has not set their millage for this year, so I'm just operating off of that. The 100% tax bill goes to several different places. You can see the majority of it goes to schools and county operations. So basically, with 6.6 round numbers going to the city can't control 94% of your tax bill. The 6.6 is all that we're talking about here. So, anybody have any questions or want any further illumination?
Could you explain on the total amount of the digest, is that a final number? What does it include? What does it not include?
It's changing by the day. I get weekly updates as they finalize or get closer to values. Also, the appeal period has started and runs through the middle of July. So people that are not satisfied with their assessment are appealing to the county, so that likely I would think would decrease as if appeals are settled in the homeowner's favor. You generally don't appeal if you want a higher value, so I'm thinking everything, the trend is going to be downward. So I would say that number is probably the maximum we can anticipate. In reality, it would likely be less, but
And do I understand that exemptions are not included in that number?
exemptions are not, right. So that's not the net digest, that's the gross.
And exemptions would include what?
Homeowner
The
homestead
homestead?
exemptions, the elderly, the freeze, all that's in there. And that was about 400 million. But anything that changes the gross could potentially change the exemptions also.
Are you familiar enough with a property tax freeze to be able to explain to the public who might not understand what that?
I think that's a lawyer question.
Are you?
What's your
familiar-
question?
So are you familiar enough with the DeKalb County, or maybe state of Georgia, property tax assessment freeze that Representative Jacobs led legislation on a number of years ago that freezes your assessed property value at a cap while you maintain your home? Sounds like that one's not on the tip of your tongue. I am looking at you.
Yes, I know you're looking at me. I was looking at
He's passing the
An
buck.
my
associate.
partners and associate that's back
See if
there, and they
there's
were
any-
shaking their heads also.
Well,
Are you sure you're not confusing this with the state of Florida?
no,
And
no. So,
in the homes, and the home freeze that you had as long as you owned your house?
No.
this is a different law. This is a state of Georgia law. I'm not sure if it applies statewide, but it definitely applies here in DeKalb County. And for the public, if they're not familiar with the law, it is available. All the information is available on the DeKalb County Tax Assessor's website. Also, the forms to petition for property tax assessment freeze. But that is done through the DeKalb County Tax Assessor's Office, not the city of Brookhaven.
Well, if you do the paperwork for the DeKalb one, you'll get the city one also.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Bonnie, I also think for the people who weren't here at the earlier public hearing, it'd be helpful to understand where we are on our reserves in our budget that we've accumulated in 2013 and hopefully in our 2014 budget, and also address the issue of the time dilemma that the city has in that we have to set our tax rate by a certain date, June 30th, and then we won't know what our actual receipts are until much further, much later in the year, November.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, DeKalb County needs our millage rate by July 1st, so they can start preparing bills, which they'll mail out mid-July. So we won't have final numbers. The appeals period is still going on at that point. So anybody that's got an active appeal, it may not be settled by the time, it definitely won't be settled probably by the time we submit our rate to the county for the billing. I would have a good idea once they do the billing, how much they billed. That's usually a good number, but that could change too if there are, reassessments throughout the year.
Is that the bill that goes out in August or September?
It should go out in August, right?
It's due, I believe,
think a
first part in
payment-
September and then November. You can pay it in two
Or
parts.
October and November, yeah. We normally start getting the money in October through November. At that point, that's the first time you can be absolutely sure how much you're going to get, is when you actually
Okay.
get it in your account.
I know we faced this same dilemma last year of trying to set a millage rate without really knowing the hard number on our digest.
Right.
Do you remember how much it changed from this early estimate to what the final number was?
Well, I think being a new city, we actually collected more than we anticipated based on the digest, and I think they were still fine-tuning what was Brookhaven, what was not unincorporated DeKalb. So I don't know if I can compare it to that year. I would think it'd be pretty close. But, I mean, I just don't know with that much, with $230 million in assessed, reassessed increase, how many people are going to appeal and how many people are going to prevail on that. That's the key to it.
From a reserve standpoint, Bonnie, tell me if this is not correct. We began having a conversation on this morning, but we're estimating about a $26.1 million budget this year, which would be the first year we'll have a full budget with full contingencies as far as police force, et cetera. Of that 26.1 general fund, it's really a combination of several factors, which would be primarily the host, stormwater, and the general fund, which would be the three largest of those.
Right.
Of the general fund, that's where we base our contingency plans on. And at
Our
about
reserve and fund balance.
our reserve, right.
Right.
So at 18.5, basically 18, that's about 1.5 a month, and if we're trying to get a 3-month reserve, we're looking at 4.5 million.
Correct.
And right now, we're about the 1 million mark, correct?
We budgeted 1 million, don't have the final numbers for 13. Well, at the end of 14,
Well,
right.
at the end of 14, right.
Yeah.
Right now, for 13, we got $1 million in the bank. So we're hoping to do a second million again this year, correct?
Right, right.
And then with the third year, we actually would have 2.5 million more to go to reach a basic contingency level of 4.5 million.
If the budget doesn't increase, right,
Right.
or change, right.
Okay, so.
Yeah, when you say contingency, I assume that means a rainy day fund or a reserve fund?
Yes.
Because we have other contingency funds. I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing.
No, it's just prudent that we have to have this backup fund.
Well, any business or homeowner, I think, knows that too.
Right, right.
Obviously, we've had some good growth, this city. Do we have any estimates of, like, how much more our population has grown? I mean, Susan, I don't know if you have a number on how many more businesses or I mean, we know we've let a lot of permits.
I don't have a number for that off the top of my head. We're in the throes of the comp plan, so we're looking at population figures now, but I don't have that number to give you at this point. But yes, there has been an increase in all activity.
Marie, do you anticipate that we might have more higher service needs given our growth?
Yes, absolutely. Just with, in preparation for our mid-year budget adjustment and meeting with department heads, in particular in public safety, I am anticipating an increased need for manpower, especially with the growth that we've had with new developments and what is projected to be permitted even this year still. In order for us to maintain our current level of service for emergency calls to respond within 3 minutes, we need to be sure that we can maintain that. And in order to do that, we're looking at additional manpower out of the police department. Our court is growing. We're looking at, another bench trial calendar for them. There's even the possibility of expanding the court calendar, and there's been some discussion about night court. So all of that increases the cost of service to provide for that expansion. So we're looking at that. We're looking at our needs in the Parks Department. So it's, as the city grows, so does our need to roll out and provide the services, and that's, to maintain our current levels of service that the mayor and council have adopted. And, if we're looking at even increasing and improving on that, there will come a cost to that as well.
Chief, would you want to comment on that at all?
Yes, we are, as the city manager said, our offices are having more court cases. Just today, I think the judges put out a notice that we are extending, we have another trial date, added another Tuesday per month. Our officers are extremely busy, and with the growth that is going on, we are having a hard time maintaining that 3-minute emergency response right now.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, let's hear from the public then. Where's our court clerk? Okay.
If anybody would like to speak, we certainly would love to hear from anybody who'd like to speak. You just have to come to the front and
Fill out a little card with
Fill out
your
a form.
name. Come on down.
You can fill it out after you talk if you'd like. Just make sure the mic is on and announce your name and
Green.
address. There you go.
Yeah.
All right, my name's Dan Downey, 1101 Fuller Road in Brookhaven. Good to see the budget, but I don't see any reason why the portion that you guys controlled, Brookhaven portion of it, the 6.6%, needs to have an increase in the budget. Services are fine. The geography is not increasing. The population might, but the police department is already policing the geography. We don't need more officers to go further out and cover more territory. It's all in the same footprint. You say you need to hire more people around here. To do what? Somebody tell me what they're going to do?
It's actually, it's difficult for us.
Excuse
you'd
me,
like-
Bates.
If you'd like to explain it.
No, we don't need to answer questions. He's here to
Okay,
comment.
well,
Thank you.
He's
But my
trying to
question-
explain the
If you would
procedure
just-
here.
Yeah,
if you
I was
would
just explaining the
explain
procedure.
protocol.
Would you just
Okay.
explain it once so everybody understands?
Okay, that'll be fine. Go ahead.
No, explain the
Yeah, you-
procedure.
All right, I get it. You don't have to answer questions.
No,
My-
it's a procedural thing in that public hearings, we can't engage.
I get
We-
it. It's okay.
Thank
you.
You can speak to us, but we can't answer.
Got it.
Questions.
The point I'm trying to make is that when we, as taxpayers, voted to have a city and elected you guys to run it, one of the primary things was that you would control the taxes. That was a huge portion of it, at least as it was explained to me when you came to my doorstep and talked to me about it. That we would demonstrate fiscal responsibility, rather, you would demonstrate fiscal responsibility and control taxes. I understand that you can't control what DeKalb County does. You can certainly control what the city of Brookhaven does. And until you have the money in hand to do some of the things that you have planned, don't do them. As a citizen, that's my opinion. Wait until you have the money before you buy more cars, or you hire more people, or you increase the police force. Quit hosing money away on completely ridiculous things like the litigation against the Pink Pony. What the heck is that about? You know, did you talk to anybody before you did that? That's $100,000 that's been pissed away so far. And it's ongoing. That's nuts. Somebody's circulating an email right now that says we have I don't know if the city manager is here, but we have the highest paid city manager in the state of Georgia. Really? We paid $40,000 to have Brookhaven stenciled on recycling bins? Really? If those things are true, that's a ridiculous spending of taxpayer money. Absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. Thank you.
Next.
Well, I'd like to ask Marie a question. Marie, did the city pay $40,000 to have containers stenciled with a Brookhaven logo?
No, we did not. There are funds in the budget. The council approved $60,000 for Clean and Beautiful initiatives. In addition to that amount, we are expecting $33,000 coming from DeKalb County at the end of their pilot program, which will be at the end of July.
Thank you.
Budgeted 60, and we're getting 33 from DeKalb.
If you'd like to come up, you're welcome, and your comments will be welcomed.
If I understand correctly, we've budgeted 60, but we're going to get 33 from DeKalb. And this is to buy bins for recycling.
No.
Well, you can't answer the question. So, again, the point I made earlier, until the money is in the bank, don't spend it. All right? It's great to make plans, but one of the things you can do until the tax digest is final is freeze everything. Freeze hiring, freeze salaries, freeze all those things that you mentioned businesses have a emergency fund. I've worked for major corporations most of my life. I've been a real estate developer for the last 7 years. When I don't have the money, I freeze things. Large corporations, they may have rainy day funds, but when things go bad, they freeze things. Okay? They don't spend money they don't have. That's the way our government should behave. Don't spend money that you don't have. All right? Now, from what I saw on the presentation, revenue is going up. People are applying for new businesses. There's infill going on, and infill doesn't happen without an increase in the property tax base. I'm sorry, but people don't take property and degrade its value. That doesn't happen. Okay, so if there's going to be development in the city of Brookhaven, it's going to increase the tax base. I, for one, think that the proper thing to do is to roll back the millage rate. And that's what I expect my elected officials to do. Now, to what extent you roll that back, I don't know yet. But it should be your goal as the people we elected to represent us to try to net things out so that we don't pay any more Brookhaven taxes than we did last year. If you don't roll back the millage rate, we will pay more Brookhaven taxes than we did last year. I, for one, as a resident and taxpayer, will be upset with you if that happens.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
My name is Jacob Vaknin, and I live in Brookhaven. We elected you to manage the city, not to spend our money. Okay? We elected you to have a better city. And according to what I knew when they came to my house to vote for Mr. Davis and all the others, are we going to make this city a lot better? We are not going to raise taxes and all that stuff. Why we have to raise taxes today? Why? I'm a senior citizen. And I work right now. I'm retired, and I live on my Social Security and a little bit that I saved. I don't have to give you that money that you spend it on other things. The mayor has to make $240,000, and everybody has to make a lot of money, and we have to suffer. No, that's not the way to manage a city. You were elected to manage city for these people, not for yourself only. I had a problem on the road with all the pothole you have there. My car was damaged, and it cost me more than $2,000. I sent a bill. They told me I'm not going to pay for it. But I have to pay the taxes? No. If you cannot pay my bill, you cannot raise the taxes. Do you have an answer to that? No, you don't answer here questions. So, where is the mayor today here? Is he here? Do you hear things like this? No.
He's at the doctor.
Huh?
He's at the doctor.
I hope he's okay. But, let me tell you something. When you started this campaign, I said I was against the city. Because I said, we're going to have a new city, we're going to have property taxes higher, we're going to have another police department, we're going to have a lot of things. You're going to employ a lot of more people. Where is that money coming from? Like the gentleman said, if you don't have the money, don't spend it. Freeze everything until you have the money. But and the gentleman said about the pink pony. I've never been there. I don't go to these places. Never. But why the fight negative business that never had a problem? Never had a problem. Spending so much money. They bring a lot of money to the city. More than any other business in that size. When I heard that there was a demonstration, I thought we're going to have a demonstration outside. But really, if we're going to raise taxes, I'm going to call for a recall of the mayor and the council. I'm going to have a campaign for that, because it's not going to happen that you're raising the city because you are a new city. No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other?
Good evening. Catherine Bernard, 1321 Oak Lawn Avenue. I came here and I took notes on why y'all want the tax increase, and based on what we've heard today, it sounds like you're telling us that you want to have a backup fund of $4.5 million, and that's why we need to raise taxes, as well as some potential higher service needs based on our growth. We've got court growing, which is kind of confusing. I haven't heard anything about DeKalb County's jail populations going down, so I don't know if the citizens of Brookhaven have simply become more criminal, or we are just manufacturing crime, or perhaps the chief could illuminate us on why we have these night court needs. I think it is concerning if we have so many criminals in Brookhaven that we are having to add new court days and trial dates without any corresponding decrease in DeKalb County's burden. So at this point, I don't think that y'all have made the case for us for why you need to raise our taxes. My understanding is that we're talking about $700,000. Our city has just hired a new communications director, someone who doesn't even live in Brookhaven, to tell Brookhaven's story. This is not a good story to be telling. The story that was told to the people who voted for Brookhaven was that this would be a way to control DeKalb County, with DeKalb County's out-of-control taxation and failure to respond to the needs of the citizens. But instead, we are seeing the problems of DeKalb County replicated at the Brookhaven level. And it is really hard to understand why. This is not a difficult question. You have the option under state law of whether or not to give $700,000 back to the citizens of Brookhaven. And you're telling us, no, well, we need it for our backup fund. Well, the households of Brookhaven need it for their own household funds too. And so I would ask you all to please stay with the commitment that you made when you started the city, which was to be more responsive to people, which, again, I don't know how a hearing scheduled at 10:30 a.m. on the 30th is going to be easy for people to get to. We already are having trouble getting people to meetings at 7 o'clock because of the traffic they're dealing with from various places. 10:30 on a Monday, that's going to be very difficult for people to be able to get to. But everyone I have talked to is just completely baffled why the city needs more money, especially after the city manager issue that we received so much publicity on. This isn't even an issue of whether or not to pay her more money. It's an issue of, do we need to increase taxes, as y'all are proposing? So I would ask that at least if you are planning to increase taxes, come out with a proposal for us. Tell us what this growth in the court needs and the police needs, what our city is doing wrong that we are having so much additional crime. So at least give us some kind of an action plan as citizens that we can do something with, rather than these vague discussions of a backup fund and higher service needs. Please be more specific with our money. It's a lot of it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Those are some good points. To that, excuse me, to the issue about reserves. Bonnie, could you speak to how rating agencies and our interest rate might be tied to reserves?
Well, definitely lenders and bond people like to see a good fund balance. I mean, it's not going to happen all at one time. Being a new city, we're going to have to grow into, a decent fund balance. So I think our thinking was to just grow it incrementally each budget year till we get to, 3 months is kind of a standard. It can be higher or lower. We can, look at that. But definitely we need to have some reserve fund to be attractive to. I mean, we do have.
Okay with me.
I apologize. One more thing. Talking about bond rating agencies and our creditworthiness.
Interest rates.
Interest rates. Why do we need to borrow money?
Tax anticipation notes?
We need to borrow money in order to meet our obligations as a city, or is this for new projects that we need to borrow money for?
Bonnie, would you mind explaining how we became operational as a city, and that the property tax revenues don't come into the city until November of the year? Just explain that process.
Yeah, the bond thing would be something in the future. We're not anticipating that right now. We do have a tax anticipation note, being that the city began like January. Property taxes don't come in until November, December, so we did have to borrow money from the bank, which is repaid in December when we get our tax revenues. So that rate They do look at our financials, they look at our financial position.
So,
Bonnie, isn't it also mandatory that that loan be paid off in full by the end of the year?
It has to be, yes.
you.
Well, and I think what would be tremendously helpful on that is if there is additional money needed that would, decrease our interest rate on this necessary loan that we have to take every year, if that could maybe be laid out in some kind of document for us to be able to look at to see, all right, well, if we add $1 million to our reserve fund, it's going to save us however much in interest. I think that would be really helpful information for people to know as they consider, their options over this millage rate issue.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, if, just for purposes of clarification to the public, is that the assessment date for ad valorem taxes for 2014 was January 1, 2014. What would be paid at the latter part of the year are the 2014 taxes. What Ms. Klein was referring to is that you have obligations commencing January 1, 2014. However, you have property tax revenues that are not going to be received until the latter part of the year. And by virtue of that, and either you have reserves or you have sufficient income from other sources, that's the reason that you have to borrow the money in order to operate during the year. And that's common for municipalities, that's common for school boards, that's common for many governmental entities that rely on property taxes.
And I think it's true for the county. I remember every year DeKalb County goes through a TAN as well. Again, you're absolutely right. As I understand it, the money doesn't come in till the end of the year, but your obligations start on January 1st. It's not unlike, I believe, a business that borrows on accounts due or sells paper. Is that
In other
right?
words, that's right. In other words, what's being assessed, what this millage rate is really relating to 2014 obligations that have already been budgeted, have already been committed. While we're looking forward to 2015, you don't know what the future holds, but that, budget that's now being prepared for 2015, to the extent that there's any, reserve or anything that's created as a result of this activity in 2014, then that's taken into consideration in the millage going forward.
Anyone else?
Yes, we have one more. Terrell Karstens.
Hey, Terrell.
Terrell Karsten, speaking as a private citizen, 2444 Oostenala Drive. What I'd like to point out is that in the past, you've told us that the courts cover the court costs. So the running of the courts is basically offset with the court fees that come in. So if the court is needing more time and needing more hours of operation and stuff, then that would mean there's more fines, the increased revenue. So the court is pretty much sustaining itself, I would guess, I'm hoping. That's what we've been told in the past. Some other things I wanted to point out was that with the new Hyatt opening, there's an estimated $780,000 in revenue anticipated from that. The startup costs for this here wonderful chamber and the police department and all of that, those costs are done now, pretty much, or almost. That we're almost done with that. These master plans, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the master plans, which we shouldn't have to budget for next year, because I'm assuming the plans will be done and that cost will have been incurred. I just think maybe if there's an incident where we need to look at things, I agree that I think it's in the budget, not in the millage rate. That there's things in the budget that can be cut. Another thing is this thing about the us having to assess or determine and vote on our millage rate before DeKalb County sets theirs. From all the research I've done is that when the numbers that DeKalb County has given us is pretty much what the numbers are going to be. It's not as if when they go down to the state for confirmation, the numbers vary and so forth. It's just a checklist of how it was submitted, that the consolidation sheets were with it. It's kind of a check sheet. It's not as if they're going to come back and change a lot of stuff. The unknowns, you're correct on that. The unknowns are there's going to be people appealing their tax assessments, and we don't know who's going to win, who's not, and how much. And then the other unknown is delinquent taxes. But those are always going to be the unknowns. It's not unknown just for this year. As long as we're in existence, those are going to be the unknowns. And you're going to, with the tax delinquent taxes, that's going to still be recouped, because whether it is through a transfer of title, sooner or later, the taxes will be paid. I mean, you can't transfer title on a property with back taxes being owed. Plus, there'll be penalties and interest incurred on that, too. So I just want you to take some of that into consideration also, as far as other things that are good, other things that are coming, other things that we've eliminated and accomplished that we're not going to have that cost anymore when you look at this. But I'm asking you to roll it back to the 2.65 or something in that manner. Thank you.
I had a question about the courts. I'm not sure, I know I've never claimed that the courts pay for themselves. I know that they generate fines and income, but let's see. Susan, do you know, or city manager, you know?
Being that they're part of the general fund, they're not in a fund by themselves, then we could tell if the revenues are equaling the expenses. I would guess that they are maintaining and they're covering their cost. They're definitely not, it's not making money. But we just don't account for it that way to know.
Actually, I'm not sure we want a system where we want our guys writing tickets in order to pay for our courts. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I did want to clarify, though, Chief, adding night court, adding additional court dates, are we just having higher crime? Are you all just doing a better job of tracking down the crime that was not being caught before?
It's a little bit of both. As I mentioned when we first started up, we didn't get complete data that we would have liked to have from DeKalb County when we first started up. The officers are doing, in my opinion, a much better job of enforcement. We've been making a number of arrests. We had 58 armed robberies on Buford Highway. We've cleared up about 38 of them. Just things like that. Traffic enforcement we're getting involved in. We're getting involved with other agencies, joining forces, and the officers are just doing, in my opinion, a better job.
Well, I know in District 1 you all have solved some crime that I was kind of shocked about, but some of it are instances that have been festering or going on for years, too.
Right, and the thing you have to keep in mind, too, is we have an average of 8 to 11 officers on the street during a given shift, whereas DeKalb at any given time, when we were doing the interviews, had anywhere from 2 to 4 officers. And if those officers were called and they had a major incident outside the city limits, the city might have 1 or 2 officers within the city, whereas we don't leave the city, we're always within the city limits.
Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're not expanding geography, that's correct, right?
Right. It's just the activity is a lot higher than we expected. Give you an example, Friday we had a drug-related shooting that ties up 3 to 4 officers for a number of hours. We're making arrests on some of those too, so.
I would think night court, too, might be a way to try to better serve the residents who can't or would be harmed by taking the day off to come for a court date.
It is more convenient for the residents that are working.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make one comment just to be sure the public understands? There's been no decision yet made that there will be a night court. These are conversations that I'm having with the court. We discussed this last year. I did with the chief judge. She felt we were not ready for that because of the caseload, but monitoring the caseloads, they are increasing. Certain accommodations have been made. We're starting court earlier during the day and hoping that will take care of the number of cases. But in addition to the cases that the police department is bringing forward to the court, we also have a number of code enforcement cases that are also coming to the court. And those cases are generated from, comments and concerns that come from the public, whereby we were able to inspect and find infractions. So, there's a number of things that are going on in the court, but I wanted to be sure that we were all clear that there's been no decision yet made. These are just preliminary conversations, things that I'm expecting as we get ready for the mid-year budget adjustment in July.
I would also point out, too, that until we vote on the millage rate, we haven't decided whether, in fact, we have announced that we do not intend to raise taxes. Whether we roll it back is really the purpose of these hearings and our attempt to study the budget and these numbers that our finance director gives us. So I don't think anything's a done deal at this point until we vote. Would you agree,
Definitely.
my colleagues?
Marie, could you shed light or give an explanation on the procedure that we follow or that you followed in setting up the number of meetings and hearings for this, how the times were set, how dates were set?
For these particular public hearings?
Yes, please.
We are required by law to have 3 hearings, one of which has to be an evening hearing, which we're accommodating right now. And we were looking at, availability of the elected, looking to the timing for which we have been placed and given a deadline by the county that we have to notify them no later than July 1. In fact, it's really June 30th. And June 30th is our last public hearing date. They're making their decisions as to what their millage rate will be, and we have to, and what the tax digest, what the tax digest is. And so we have to conform to what they've asked for and abide by that, because they perform the assessments and the valuations and set the digest, for which we receive a portion of.
Thank you.
Just one other thing I wanted to clarify. We've talked about sometimes the delay in these things, but for instance, we're as thrilled as anyone about the opening of the Hyatt. We have 3 new apartment buildings that have, opened up and brought a lot of residents to Brookhaven. But many of those, certainly the Hyatt, wasn't on the books when the assessment came down. So in fact, while we will benefit from that in the future, it won't be on the tax rolls in this 2014.
Correct, right. And some of the growth that we're seeing in the digest, or the proposed digest, comes from dormant land, raw land that has now been subdivided, or some of it has been redeveloped. And so instead of having one tract of land, now there are multiple tracts of land. So that, of course, increases the value. So some of these dollars are based on improvements that have been made in the city, but also capturing some of the properties that were not captured the year before because they didn't hit the digest in time, such as what you've just described as with the Hyatt.
Would you also clarify, too, do we spend money we don't have?
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay. Anyone else?
Carol, you want to come back up? Please.
I'd like to say one more thing, please. The freeze does not include school, city, or state on the tax bill. If you do your freeze, it won't affect those parts of it. The freeze does expire in 2017. I did confirm that today. They tried to get it through legislation, this last legislative session, and it didn't go through. So hopefully that's something else we can work on with our state representatives, is to get that so that that doesn't expire, that it becomes something that's concrete.
Thanks for clarifying.
For our city attorney, is that a sunset law? The state of Georgia have sunset laws on anything?
If the date has been set,
Years.
sunset at 2017, then it would be unless it were extended.
It's 10 years for any legislation that affects taxes or revenue? Is that what the sunset?
I'm not prepared to answer that. Excuse me.
No.
One comment, if you have to borrow money to meet your obligations, you're spending money you don't have. Now, we understand why that works and how that has to work. What I suggest is that you be patient in accomplishing some of the worthy goals that you have. Night court is a nice to have, not a must have. It adds expense that isn't in the current budget until the current budget expands from growth to be able to fund that. Don't do it. That's what we're asking for, is it's great to have plans to do neat things, okay? It is. I am delighted that we have 10 police officers or 11 police officers now versus 2 to 4 when DeKalb was doing it. We don't need 13 or 14 until we can afford it, all right? That's all I'm saying. Be patient. We'll get there. There's lots of really nice things to have, but we can't have them all today. That's how 16-year-olds behave. I have 2 of those, okay? Let's be adults.
If I could just make a statement regarding the gentleman's comment, and I think he brought up a good point that I think is important for the public to know. And you'll recall when we were developing the 2014 budget, and even when we were doing the 2013 budget, much of the expenditures were delayed. They did not occur January 1. We have many items in our current budget that have been delayed to the mid-year or even later. So just because the budget amount is $26.1 million, which is what we're operating off of right now, we're not spending all of that come January 1. So, we are stretching that out, and we are, spending the money when we have it. So I think that's important for the public to understand, especially with governmental budgeting, because for municipalities especially, we are dependent upon the funds coming from the collector, which is the county. And these come in drifts. They don't come on the same day each year, every year. They come over a 2 to 3 month period. And the comment made about, taxes that are unpaid, that when properties close, then we get them, and that's absolutely correct. But during that waiting time for us to get that delayed tax, we have to perform services. When someone calls 911, we don't check to see if they've paid their taxes. We have to respond. By law, we have to respond. So we've been very careful. The finance manager and I have gone through the budgets for 2013 and 2014, and we've been very, very careful to delay expenditures when the time is appropriate and not before.
Anyone else?
There was this statement about that we're not going to raise taxes, that's not on the table. But it is my understanding that.
We're not going to raise the millage rate. We have said
Okay.
that repeatedly. Now, you may call it taxes, but millage rate is in fact the tax rate.
Okay. Well, I just wanted, because I was just taking a look at the statute, and there was a Brookhaven notice of property tax increase filed, and that was what triggered the need for these three meetings,
Which is what the
right?
state requires us to
Okay.
word it that way.
So, but it is a property tax increase because it results in more property taxes being assessed against citizens of Brookhaven. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about understanding what it is we're talking about, because you are talking about an additional $700,000 of taxpayer money coming out of Brookhaven pockets. So it does seem fair to regard that as a raise in taxes. Is that?
I'm just going to make a general comment. There's actually a debate going on in other states. They call this a revenue increase, not a tax increase. Well, you can laugh, but it is what it is. Not everybody's assessment went up.
We need decorum, Madam Pro Tem.
Pardon me?
If we could have decorum so that the elected can hear what is being said by the madam at the
Well,
podium.
I think we've been more than
Right,
patient with and giving
Exactly.
you multiple times to speak.
right.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are talking about raising the taxes that are being taken from Brookhaven citizens. I just didn't want there to be any confusion if we were all complaining over something that wasn't actually a tax increase. That would make us sound pretty silly, but we are talking about more taxes from Brookhaven citizens.
I can't really
no.
answer you.
Well, I mean, I think it's evident the millage is not going up, but the values have gone up.
Right.
Now, where those
Not
values
everybody's
have gone
values
up, whether
have,
they're
though.
commercial or whether they're
Right.
residential,
Or ad
That's not
valorem on
been-
cars.
Right.
Especially in light of our House Representatives' bill on property tax freezes, which of course has gotten quite a bit of attention. That might be something that could possibly be clarified by the city for the benefit of everybody.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you all.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Sure.
Sure, please.
I'm not sure what the
Tell us your name and your address.
Okay, Michelle Conlon, 1430 Oconee Pass, Northeast.
Well, first time I've met you.
Yes. So,
How interesting.
I just wanted to see, I'm trying to understand where we kind of fit in the grand scheme of things. And so we got our assessment our previous year property value was 199.6, and this current year is 295.3. Is that what some other people are seeing, or is I'm completely out of the norm there on residential property, seeing $100,000?
I'd suggest you appeal.
Really?
Just trying to figure this out. So.
We've really heard assessments all
$100,000 in
over.
1 year.
I had a call today from somebody whose assessment went from 288 to 700,000.
All right, so,
And then I talked to another woman whose value of the house was assessed $40,000 to $60,000 less.
I told my husband, I said, if that's the case, I think we need to sell tomorrow. So,
Let me ask,
That much.
please don't leave Brookhaven over a
no,
mistake.
but I'm just,
But,
we've been here for 13 years. So.
Do we have, we sent out notice to all of our citizens about the website for the appeals of property taxes. Has that gone out to residents yet with the web address?
Mike?
That has gone out?
Yeah,
All right, so.
I'm just kind of
Yeah.
understand where we're
Yeah.
fitting in the grand
I would
scheme of
check
things.
with your neighbors to kind
Yeah,
of see
I-
what the comparables are.
Right.
Right, ma'am.
So, okay.
But also, you can go to DeKalb County Tax Assessor's Office and
Right.
all of the information about appealing, or
Right.
you can look to, there are attorneys out there who handle this stuff all day long for people.
Yeah, we've appealed in the past, but this has probably been the largest property value increase we've seen in 13 years.
Of course, your area is hot.
It is, but not $100,000 hot, but I think a 1,400
Yeah.
square foot home, so.
Yeah,
All right.
and I think sometimes the problem is that, as I understand the way they do assessments, is that they will look at comparables in your neighborhood. So you may have the unimproved 1960s ranch, but somebody just put a
Yeah,
McMansion
I agree.
2
Yeah,
doors down from you.
Yeah, that's fair.
That
We
is
do have
throwing
that
off
going on in our
your
neighborhood, but-
assessment. And
Okay.
and that's why you ought to appeal, because then you can point that
Right,
out.
okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Thank you all very much for showing up. We do appreciate you coming out, and we appreciate hearing from you. And if you want to continue this dialogue, come back on the 30th, and we'll be voting then. With that, I close this meeting.
The public